I was 14 when my entire world collapsed. My name is Ayaan. Until that night, I had a family that made my life feel warm, safe, and complete. My parents weren't rich. We were just middle class, living in a modest house on a narrow street. But inside those walls, we had everything that mattered: love, laughter, and dreams. Sparkles. Friends, if Ayaan's journey touched your heart even a little, then please don't forget to subscribe. Your support gives me strength to bring more stories filled with emotions, suspense, and life-changing lessons. Click that subscribe button and join me in this storytelling journey. Sparkles. My younger sister, Alina, was only 9. She was the heart of our family, always running around, singing loudly, drawing crooked stars on the walls even though Mama scolded her for it. My father worked hard as a clerk, and my mother stayed home, making sure we never went to bed hungry. We weren't perfect, but we were together. Then came that night. It was raining. The roads were slick and dangerous, but Baba insisted we drive back home from my uncle's house. I remember sitting in the back seat, half asleep, watching the rain blur through the glass. Alina was beside me, humming softly, and then screeching tires, headlights blinding, the deafening sound of metal colliding, screams, silence. When I woke up in the hospital, my head was pounding. Tubes, white walls, the smell of antiseptic, and the unbearable news: Mama, Baba, and Alina were gone. Just like that, I was no longer a son, no longer a brother, just alone. At first, people came, neighbors, relatives. They spoke in hushed tones, eyes full of pity. But pity never lasts. And soon, I found myself standing in an empty house with only memories echoing in every room. That's when my uncle, Rashid, and his wife, Samina, stepped in. At first, I thought maybe I would still have a family, maybe I wouldn't have to fight this pain alone. But I was wrong. They weren't saviors, they were vultures. "This house belongs to us now," Uncle Rashid said one morning, his voice cold. "You're just a child. You can't handle property or responsibility." And Samina added, her eyes sharp with greed. I tried to protest. I cried, begged them not to take away the last piece of my parents I had left. But they didn't care. They took the house, sold the furniture, and one night, without warning, they threw me out. No suitcase, no money, just a bag with a few clothes and my father's old wristwatch. I wandered the streets until my legs gave up. I sat on the pavement, shivering, my stomach growling with hunger, tears soaking my face. People passed by, some glancing at me, most ignoring me. To them, I was just another stray kid. But fate, cruel as it was, gave me a small lifeline. An old man who owned a tiny tea cafe saw me sitting outside his shop. He didn't smile, didn't show pity. He just said, "If you want food, boy, work for it." And so I began, washing cups, wiping tables, sweeping floors. My hands cracked, my back ached, but at least I had bread at the end of the day. At night, when the cafe closed, I curled up outside the door, the cold ground my only bed. But life on the street wasn't kind. Some customers mocked me. Kids my age pointed and laughed, calling me names. A few threw coins at me, as if I was a beggar. And each insult carved itself deeper into the cracks already splitting my heart. Still I endured. Because what choice did I have? Every night, before I closed my eyes under the street lamp's dim light, I whispered to myself, "Survive, Ayaan. Just survive." And I didn't know it then, but this was only the beginning. Ayaan's second morning without his family felt heavier than the first. The sound of laughter from nearby homes cut through him like a knife. Children his age left for school with their parents holding their hands, while Ayaan tightened his worn-out shoes and headed toward the cafe that had become his only refuge. The owner, Khalid Chacha, was a strict but fair man. He let Ayaan work for a few coins, enough for a piece of bread and tea. But the other workers often mocked him. "Orphan boy," they whispered. "He doesn't belong anywhere." Ayaan kept his head down, scrubbing tables, serving tea, and cleaning dishes. His hands, once soft, were now blistered and rough. Yet at night, when the cafe closed, he had no bed to return to. He would lie outside, on the cold pavement, hugging his thin shawl tightly. The stars above were his only comfort. One night, while he slept outside the cafe, a group of teenagers passed by. They laughed cruelly, throwing empty bottles near him. "Look at the beggar boy," one of them jeered. Ayaan didn't respond. He closed his eyes tighter, silently praying for the night to pass quickly. But his heart bled with every insult. Days turned into weeks. Hunger gnawed at him, loneliness clung to him, but somewhere deep inside, a spark refused to die. He remembered his sister's smile, his mother's warm hands, his father's voice telling him, "No matter how hard life gets, never give up." That memory pushed him forward. One evening, after a long shift, an old man entered the cafe. His clothes were simple, but his eyes were kind. He watched Ayaan rushing from one table to another, never complaining, never resting. When Ayaan brought him tea, the man asked softly, "Son, where is your home?" For a moment, Ayaan's throat tightened. He wanted to say he had none. But instead, he whispered, "This is my home now." The old man didn't reply, but the look in his eyes said he saw something in Ayaan others didn't, a strength, a quiet resilience. That night, as Ayaan curled up outside again, he thought about the old man's gaze. It was the first time in weeks someone had looked at him with kindness instead of pity or cruelty. He didn't know it yet, but that man would play a role in changing his life forever. And as the wind howled around him, Ayaan promised himself, "I will survive, no matter what." The next morning, Ayaan woke up with aching bones, the chill of the pavement still clinging to his skin. He brushed the dust off his clothes, tied his shoelaces tighter, and stepped back into the cafe for another long day of work. As he served tea to a group of customers, his eyes caught the familiar figure, the old man from the night before. He was sitting quietly at the corner table, sipping tea, his gaze never leaving Ayaan. Ayaan felt a strange mix of curiosity and unease. Why was the man watching him? When the rush slowed down, the old man gestured for Ayaan to sit. Startled, Ayaan shook his head. I can't. Khalid Chacha doesn't like us resting during work." The man smiled gently. "Then bring me another cup of tea and sit for just a minute. Consider it part of your service." Hesitant, Ayaan obeyed. He poured the tea and sat down nervously, his hands trembling. "What's your name, son?" the man asked. "Ayaan." The man nodded thoughtfully. "And how old are you?" 14, Ayaan muttered, lowering his eyes. There was a long silence. Then the man leaned forward. Ayaan, you're too young to be carrying such heavy burdens alone. Where are your parents? The question pierced Ayaan's heart. His lips quivered. Gone, he whispered. Car accident. My sister too. Now, I have no one. The man's eyes softened. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small packet, and slid it across the table. Inside were 2 pieces of bread and a boiled egg. Eat, he said simply. Ayaan stared at the food as if it were treasure. He hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. His stomach growled, but he looked up with hesitation. I can't take this. The man placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. You can, and you will, because sometimes strength also means accepting help. Tears stung Ayaan's eyes as he slowly ate. No one had shown him this much kindness since his parents' death. For a brief moment, the world felt less cruel. Before leaving, the man stood and said quietly, My name is Rahman. I'll be back tomorrow. And he was. Every evening, Rahman visited the cafe, sitting in the same corner, watching over Ayaan. Some nights, he brought him food. Other nights, he simply spoke to him about life, about loss, about resilience. His words were like balm to Ayaan's wounded soul. But Ayaan couldn't help but wonder, why me? Why did this stranger care so much? That question gnawed at him. And deep inside, he sensed that Rahman was hiding something Ayaan wasn't ready to hear yet. It was late at night. The cafe had closed, and the streets were quiet except for the pale moonlight and the distant glow of passing cars. Ayaan sat on the old wooden bench outside the cafe, the same bench that had slowly become his home. Wrapped in a worn-out blanket he had secretly taken from the storeroom, he tried to shield himself from the sharp night breeze. That night, the wind felt colder than usual. Ayaan pulled the blanket tighter and looked up at the sky. He thought to himself, if Mom were here, she would be scolding me for sitting out in the cold, and my sister would probably be laughing at me, teasing me for being so sensitive. His chest grew heavy with the memory, but he held back the tears. Crying wasn't an option anymore. It felt like a luxury he couldn't afford. Out here on the streets, every tear made him feel weaker, and weakness was something the world around him was always ready to crush. Still, deep inside, he whispered into the empty night, I miss you. That was when he heard footsteps. Slow, careful, and drawing closer. Ayaan tensed, clutching the blanket. In this town, not every stranger meant kindness. The footsteps grew louder, echoing against the empty street. Ayaan's heart raced. His mind flashed with all the insults and kicks he had already endured from strangers who thought he didn't belong here. But then, a voice broke the silence. Hey, are you okay? Ayaan looked up. A man stood in front of him, tall, wearing a long coat, holding a small paper bag. His face was kind but unreadable under the dim streetlight. Ayaan hesitated, clutching his blanket tighter. I'm fine, he lied. The man studied him for a moment, then slowly placed the paper bag on the bench beside him. It's warm bread. Fresh. I think you need it more than I do. Before Ayaan could respond, the man turned and started walking away, his footsteps fading into the night. Confused and trembling, Ayaan opened the bag. The warm smell of bread filled his nose, making his stomach twist with hunger. He hadn't eaten since the cafe closed hours ago. Slowly, he took a bite, and for the first time in many days, he felt warmth spreading inside him. But even as he ate, his mind raced. Who was that man? Why would a stranger help me when even my own blood turned me away? He didn't know it yet, but this small act of kindness would be the beginning of something much larger, a truth that would change everything he thought he knew about the world and about his own past. The nights were still cold, and the cafe floor was still his bed, but something inside the boy had begun to change. He was no longer just surviving, he was learning. Every evening, while washing dishes, he would secretly listen to customers' conversations. He noticed how businessmen spoke with confidence, how students discussed books and exams, and how travelers shared stories of places far beyond his small town. Each word was like a window opening to a world he had never known. One night, an elderly man in a gray coat, a regular at the cafe, lingered after everyone had left. He watched the boy wiping tables with quiet dedication. "You're here every night, aren't you?" the man asked softly. The boy froze, unsure whether to answer. For months, silence had been his shield. But something in the man's gentle eyes made him nod. The man placed a worn-out book on the counter. Its cover was faded, the corners torn. "This saved me once," he said. "Maybe it will save you too." When the boy opened the book later, under the dim streetlight, his heart skipped. It wasn't just any book. It was about resilience, about rising from pain, about believing that tomorrow could be different. For the first time since losing his family, he felt a flicker of hope, a fragile spark that maybe, just maybe, his story wasn't meant to end in suffering. He whispered into the night, as if speaking to his parents and sister. "I'll make you proud. I promise." And though no one answered, the stars above seemed to listen. Days passed, but the boy never let go of the book the old man had given him. He read every page slowly, tracing the words with his finger, whispering them under his breath as though the sentences carried magic. They did. For the first time, his mind began to dream beyond hunger and cold nights. At the cafe, he started noticing things. How the manager kept the accounts, how the waiters spoke politely to customers, how the chef handled pressure when orders came rushing in. He studied it all in silence, as if the cafe itself had become his classroom. One evening, when the cafe was unusually crowded, a waiter slipped and dropped a tray of tea. The manager shouted, chaos spread, and the customers grew impatient. The boy, without thinking, picked up the tray, straightened the cups, and moved through the tables with steady hands. His voice was calm, his movements confident. The room, once noisy, settled. The manager stared at him in surprise. You handled that better than my trained staff," he muttered. From that day, the boy was no longer just the cleaner. The manager gave him a chance to serve customers, to take orders, to stand inside the cafe instead of outside. That night, instead of sleeping on the cold pavement, the boy was allowed a small corner inside the cafe storeroom. It was still rough, with sacks of sugar and tea leaves for company, but it was warm. It was safe. As he lay down, clutching the old man's book to his chest, a tear rolled down his cheek. This time, it wasn't from pain. It was from the smallest taste of dignity. For the first time in a long time, he closed his eyes with a thought that didn't hurt. Maybe tomorrow will be kinder than today. The cafe had become the boy's new world. Every day, he wiped tables, poured tea, and greeted customers with a shy but warm smile. Some people ignored him. Some frowned, but a few nodded politely. Still, he carried himself with quiet dignity, never forgetting the nights he spent shivering on the pavement. One rainy evening, the bell over the cafe door rang, and a man in a fine coat walked in. He wasn't like the usual customers. His watch gleamed, his shoes clicked against the floor, and his eyes carried the sharpness of someone who noticed everything. He sat near the corner, opened a notebook, and ordered tea. The boy brought his cup carefully. "Here's your tea, sir," he said softly, placing it on the table without spilling a drop. The man looked up, studying him. "You're young," he said. "Shouldn't you be in school instead of here?" The boy froze. No one had ever asked him that. His throat tightened, and for a moment he wanted to run away. But he found his courage. "My family is gone, sir," he whispered. "This cafe is all I have." The man's gaze lingered. He didn't ask more, but when he left, he placed money on the table, far more than the price of tea. The boy ran after him, holding the change. "Sir, you forgot this." The man smiled faintly. "Keep it. You'll need it more than I do." That night, the boy lay awake in the storeroom. For the first time, he wondered if the world still had kindness left in it, scattered in unexpected places. What he didn't know was that the stranger would return, again and again, and with him, the boy's life would begin to change in ways he could never imagine. Days passed, then weeks. The boy almost believed the man in the fine coat had been just a dream. Life at the cafe continued, washing dishes until his hands cracked, carrying trays heavier than his small frame could bear, and sleeping curled up near the back door. Yet, inside him, a small flicker of hope refused to die. One evening, just as the cafe lights glowed against the dusk, the bell rang. The boy turned, and there he was. The stranger. Same polished shoes, same sharp eyes, same quiet presence. The boy's heart skipped. He hurried to serve him, this time without trembling. "Good evening, sir. Tea?" The man nodded, watching him. "You remembered. I don't forget faces," the boy replied softly. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then the man asked, "Tell me your name." The boy hesitated. No one had asked in a long time. "Ayaan," he said finally. His voice almost cracked at the sound of his own name. The man repeated it slowly, as though testing the weight of it. "Ayaan. Strong name." He sipped his tea. Then, in a tone calm but firm, he said, "Do you want to spend your whole life serving tables, or do you want to change your story?" Ayaan froze. The words cut through him. No one had ever spoken like that to him. Not his cruel uncle, not the customers, not anyone. His chest ached with a strange mix of fear and longing. I want to change it," Ayaan whispered. The man leaned closer. "Then listen carefully. I can help you, but the road won't be easy. You'll need to fight harder than you ever have. Do you understand?" Ayaan nodded, his small fists tightening at his sides. When the man left, he pressed a folded note into Ayaan's hand. "Read this when you're alone." Later that night, under the dim cafe light, Ayaan opened it. His eyes widened at the words written there. "Meet me tomorrow. Same place. Same time. If you want your life to change." A storm brewed inside him. Could he trust this man? Or was this another trap from the world that had already taken everything from him? For the first time in years, Ayaan's heart beat not with despair, but with a dangerous spark of possibility. The next evening, Ayaan could barely work. Every clink of a teacup, every scrape of a chair, felt like thunder in his ears. The stranger's note burned in his pocket. When the clock hands pointed to the promised time, Ayaan slipped outside, his small legs carrying him faster than ever before. He reached the corner where the man had first appeared. The night was unusually quiet, the air heavy with suspense. Ayaan waited. Minutes passed. His heart pounded harder with every shadow that stretched across the street. Finally, a car pulled up. Its headlights blinded him. The door opened, and the man stepped out, his coat swaying with authority. Relief washed over Ayaan. But then, another figure emerged from the car. A man with a cruel smirk and eyes that cut like knives. Ayaan froze. He knew that face. His uncle. "Ayaan," the uncle sneered, walking toward him. "So this is where you've been wasting your time." The boy's chest tightened. His eyes darted to the stranger, searching for protection. But the stranger remained calm, almost unreadable. "Why? Why is he here?" Ayaan whispered. The stranger looked at him, then at the uncle. "Because, boy, life will test you. Even in the moment you think salvation is near." The uncle's hand clamped down on Ayaan's shoulder, his grip iron. "You belong to me. Don't forget that." Fear choked him. For a moment, he thought it was over, that hope had tricked him again. But then, something inside Ayaan shifted. He wrenched free, his small voice trembling but fierce. "No, I don't belong to you anymore." The uncle's eyes narrowed, but before he could strike, the stranger's voice cut through the night like steel. "Careful. The boy is under my protection now." The uncle scoffed, but there was something in the man's presence, something powerful, that made him step back. Muttering curses, he retreated to the car and drove off, leaving the smell of smoke and anger behind. Ayaan's knees shook. He looked at the stranger, torn between fear and gratitude. "Why? Why did you bring him?" Ayaan asked, his voice raw. The man's eyes softened just a little. "To see if you were ready to choose." "And you did." For the first time, Ayaan realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about courage. That night, Ayaan barely slept. The words of the stranger echoed in his head. "You chose." But what did it mean? He had stood up to his uncle, yes, but was that enough to change anything? The next evening, Ayaan returned to the cafe. He expected nothing. Maybe the stranger would vanish, leaving him with more questions than answers. But when he stepped inside, his eyes widened. There at the counter stood the stranger. Not in the shadows this time, but in plain sight, sipping tea as if he belonged. The cafe owner, usually gruff and impatient, seemed oddly respectful toward him. When Ayaan approached, the man looked down and gave a faint nod. "Sit." Ayaan obeyed, sliding into the seat across from him. "I watched you these past weeks," the man began, his voice steady. "You work hard. You endure. Most children in your place would have broken. But you—" He paused, studying the boy. "You have fire." Ayaan didn't know what to say. His hands fidgeted under the table. "I can offer you something," the man continued. "Not money, not comfort, but a path." Ayaan's heart raced. "What kind of path?" The stranger leaned closer, his eyes sharp yet strangely kind. "A chance to build yourself, to learn, to never bow to cruelty again." The boy swallowed hard. He had dreamed of such words, dreamed of someone who saw more in him than just a poor, orphan boy. "But why me?" Ayaan whispered. The stranger's gaze softened. "Because strength is not given to the strongest. It is given to those who survive when they should have fallen. And you, Ayaan, survived." For the first time in months, a flicker of hope stirred in his chest. "Will you take this path?" the man asked. Ayaan hesitated. Fear gnawed at him. What if this was another trap? Another broken promise? But then he remembered his parents, his sister, the nights he cried under the cold stars. He remembered how he said to his uncle, "I don't belong to you anymore." He lifted his head, his voice trembling but determined. "Yes, I will." The stranger's lips curved into the faintest smile. He placed a small, leather-bound book on the table and slid it across. "Then your journey begins." The boy touched the book with reverence. It wasn't gold, it wasn't food, but it felt heavier than anything he had ever held. A key, a promise, a door opening where he thought only walls existed. That night, as Ayaan walked back to his usual spot outside the cafe, he didn't feel the cold as much. For the first time, the darkness didn't seem endless. Somewhere ahead, there was light. That night, Ayaan opened the leather-bound book under the dim streetlight. Its pages were old, smelling faintly of dust and ink. At first, he thought it was empty, but then he noticed faint words etched in handwriting so fine it almost looked like shadows on paper. The first line read, "To endure is strength, to rise is choice." Ayaan traced the words with his finger, his heart pounding. This wasn't just a book. It was meant for him. The next pages weren't ordinary either. They weren't filled with stories or lessons like he expected. Instead, there were questions, riddles, puzzles, sentences left half-finished, as if waiting for him to complete them. "Why give me this?" Ayaan muttered under his breath. But something deep inside whispered, "Because you're ready." The following days, he carried the book everywhere. He worked in the cafe during the day, then stayed up at night, reading, thinking, writing answers in the margins. And strangely, the more he wrote, the more alive he felt. It was as though the book wasn't just teaching him, but listening to him. One evening, the stranger appeared again. He leaned on the cafe doorframe, watching as Ayaan scrubbed the counters. "Show me," he said. Ayaan froze. "Show you what?" "The book. What you've written." With trembling hands, the boy pulled out the worn leather volume. The man flipped through the pages, scanning Ayaan's scribbles. Then, for the first time, he smiled fully, not a faint curve, but a true smile that lit his sharp features. "You understand more than I thought," he said softly. Ayaan's chest swelled. No one had ever said that to him before. But just as the moment warmed him, the stranger's expression shifted. His smile vanished, his tone grew heavier. "You must be careful. Knowledge is power, and power attracts eyes." Ayaan frowned. "What do you mean?" The man closed the book and handed it back. His eyes flicked toward the street outside. "Not everyone wants to see you rise, Ayaan. Some will do anything to keep you down, even destroy you." A chill ran through the boy. He thought of his uncle, his aunt, the cruel laughter of strangers on the street. But the way the man said it, it felt bigger than that, as if unseen forces were already moving against him. That night, as Ayaan curled up outside with the book clutched to his chest, he felt both stronger and more afraid than ever before. The world had finally handed him a key, but keys could open doors to wonders or to dangers, and he didn't know which one was waiting. That night, Ayaan opened the leather-bound book under the dim streetlight. Its pages were old, smelling faintly of dust and ink. At first, he thought it was empty, but then he noticed faint words etched in handwriting so fine it almost looked like shadows on paper. The first line read, "To endure is strength, to rise is choice." Ayaan traced the words with his finger, his heart pounding. This wasn't just a book. It was meant for him. The next pages weren't ordinary either. They weren't filled with stories or lessons like he expected. Instead, there were questions, riddles, puzzles, sentences left half-finished, as if waiting for him to complete them. "Why give me this?" Ayaan muttered under his breath. But something deep inside whispered, "Because you're ready." The following days, he carried the book everywhere. He worked in the cafe during the day, then stayed up at night, reading, thinking, writing answers in the margins. And strangely, the more he wrote, the more alive he felt. It was as though the book wasn't just teaching him, but listening to him. One evening, the stranger appeared again. He leaned on the cafe doorframe, watching as Ayaan scrubbed the counters. "Show me," he said. Ayaan froze. "Show you what?" "The book. What you've written." With trembling hands, the boy pulled out the worn leather volume. The man flipped through the pages, scanning Ayaan's scribbles. Then, for the first time, he smiled fully, not a faint curve, but a true smile that lit his sharp features. "You understand more than I thought," he said softly. Ayaan's chest swelled. No one had ever said that to him before. But just as the moment warmed him, the stranger's expression shifted. His smile vanished, his tone grew heavier. "You must be careful. Knowledge is power, and power attracts eyes." Ayaan frowned. "What do you mean?" The man closed the book and handed it back. His eyes flicked toward the street outside. "Not everyone wants to see you rise, Ayaan. Some will do anything to keep you down, even destroy you." A chill ran through the boy. He thought of his uncle, his aunt, the cruel laughter of strangers on the street. But the way the man said it, it felt bigger than that, as if unseen forces were already moving against him. That night, as Ayaan curled up outside with the book clutched to his chest, he felt both stronger and more afraid than ever before. The world had finally handed him a key, but keys could open doors to wonders or to dangers. And he didn't know which one was waiting. To be continued.